Why is Russia invading Ukraine? Why are there wars constantly going off in the Middle East? Why is America the most powerful country in the world? These are the kind of questions that occurred to me when I was growing up, and it's for these reasons that I've gotten more involved in geopolitics in recent years. The aim of this video is to discuss what geopolitics is, why it matters, and also what kind of roles there are within geopolitics for anyone looking to get involved in it. Before we dive into it, do make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. World Order is a geopolitical channel, but I also cover media and industry. I do weekly shows like the one I'm doing right now, and I also produce more highly produced videos on famous geopolitical and just famous global figures. So if you haven't already, do go check those out and hit the bell icon so that you never miss out on a single video. Without further ado, let's dive into it. Geopolitics is essentially the interaction between states on a global stage. It's kind of like politics meets geography. It's these two combined, but it's so much more than that. And just defining it as that really doesn't do justice to just how broad a field this is. Within geopolitics, there are so many branches, which I will go into more in the second half of this video. You know, this ranges from defense to trade, to cybersecurity, to just so many things. But before we dive into it, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself and why I got involved in geopolitics. I think my story really begins with the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. I wasn't there, and I despite my appearance, I didn't do it, but that's really when it began. I was a very, very young child at the time. I remember exactly where I was when the 9/11 attacks happened. I was at school. I was so young. I was like, this is 2000, so I was like 8 years old at the time, and I was in art class, and I was drawing something, and I was talking to my friend as I was drawing, and the radio suddenly came on, and the teacher told everyone to just, I think it was either shut up or stop talking, I just remember the look on her face, and she literally told everyone, just, everyone be quiet. And, the news came that two planes had hit the World Trade Center, and everyone in the class was like, what? It was insane. My life changed forever after that moment, because everywhere I was, the kitchen, the playground, suddenly geopolitics entered my life, and it really shaped me in ways that I don't think any geopolitical event ever has, actually. Not only because it came to me at a young age, but also because, I am ethnically Middle Eastern, and whilst I consider myself a British citizen, there is this part of me that does identify as Middle Easterner as well. And the very way people started talking about people from the Middle East was something I was particularly sensitive to, and it was crazy because, before that event, I had gone to Iran maybe every other year. So I'm a British citizen, but I have family members who live in Iran, and I used to go there every other year. And, whenever I went there, I was met by so much love and so much joy, and some of the warmest people I've ever met, some of the most hospitable people I've ever met. It was just so much love and so much joy. And, I'd come, and suddenly, the only time Middle Easterns were ever referenced was as terrorists. So all of a sudden, these Middle Easterns were no longer the loving people I'd come to know, and whenever I flicked the television on, the only thing Middle Easterners were terrorists. And this is obviously an exaggeration. I think the BBC is a very professional organization. Whenever they spoke about terrorists, it really was as terrorists. I don't think they at all actually tried to brandish Middle Easterners as all terrorists. But what happened was, because the human mind can be so simplistic and stupid sometimes, is that I think a lot of people form stereotypes of Middle Eastern people. And the unfortunate stereotype that formed during those 2000s, during that whole war on terror era, was, okay, well, the Middle Easterner is a terrorist. And that was pretty rough growing up, but it got me super invested in this whole thing, this geopolitical topic. Why did the 9/11 terrorist attacks happen, And that got me down this rabbit hole of investigation and inquiry, and I started looking into the war on terror. I started looking into Britain's and America's role in it. I started looking at why these attacks happened, and it's kind of been non-stop ever since that. Why did Brexit happen? Why was Trump elected? All these things. And I can make so many more videos where I discuss my opinions on these. Hopefully in time I find more and more statistics and evidence to back all this stuff up. Alongside my budding interest in geopolitics was also my desire, my ultimate desire in life, which is to create the next Star Wars. Now this seems a bit random to just place in this video on what is geopolitics, but my ultimate goal in life is to create the next Star Wars, the next epic saga of action adventure, sci-fi, fantasy, and operatic movie series. That's the goal. And for me, I think I can only create my world and do justice to it if I have a very good understanding of geopolitics, international trade, defense, different cultures, different religious groups, and so on. I need to understand all of this before I do that. I mean, that's the imperative for me. That's what's led to the creation of this channel. That's what's led to some of my existing mini movies, and that's what's going to lead to the bigger, larger mini movies that are to come in the next couple of years. And by getting it more into geopolitics, I've started to realize just how diverse a field it is. I spoke earlier about how geopolitics is the interaction between different countries, maybe even different businesses. In this video, I've discussed 3 of the key ones, and then maybe I'll do other videos on other topics later on. So the first one I want to discuss is international trade, which, I think is perhaps the most important one. And obviously, if you disagree, you can let me know. But I think, where do I even begin with this? That generally speaking, there's lots of theories within international relations. But the 2 that stand out more so than any 2 theories are realism and liberalism. With liberalism generally being the belief that it revolves around the individual and around property rights, and capitalism is often a big part of it. But at its core, liberalism is essentially about creating a more peaceful and prosperous world order. This way, liberals tend to be much more optimistic about what we can do with our world order and how peaceful and prosperous it can be. Liberals tend to have a lot of faith in global institutions. They see institutions like the UN, the World Trade Organization, the IMF, the World Bank, and all these things, NATO. They see all of these things as fundamental goods, and there is the case to be made for that. I think the unipolar moment led by the United States, even the United States since the Cold War, I think that has led to a more stable world order. But the downside is, well, yes, we might have a bit more stability, but America really is capitalizing on it more so than anyone else. They're calling the shots. It's their world order, and there have definitely been times, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, so on, where they've made errors and where the world order is really they kind of just run it at the expense of others, maybe developing in their autonomously or in ways that suit their self-interest. The problem with a world order without US hegemony was that it was incredibly chaotic. You got to think about the world before America's dominance. So the world in between 1900 to maybe 1945, it was so much messier, with national movements taking off left, right, and center. Yes, countries had more autonomy and were more self-reliant, but there was also an influx of nationalism that led to 2 world wars, 2 very destructive world wars. And I think this is the thing, especially with the liberal institutionalists, when they make this claim that America has had a positive effect on the world. I think you can make that claim to some extent. It kind of works when the world has a global hegemon acting as world police. So I think a lot of people are going to attack me for saying that. I'm just saying there's a case to be made there. There is the other side. Okay, so now let's swing to the realists. And I myself actually identify a little bit more with this movement than the liberals. Though, again, there are pros and cons with both. I am generally a centrist. Okay, I'm just saying that right now so that you know. The realists tend to... They see the nation as the ultimate unit of analysis. The nation state is the ultimate unit of analysis, and they believe in the nation state prioritizing its self-interest above all other things. Power is central to the realist philosophy. I mean, the nation state's fundamental concern is survival and then prosperity. I think liberals might put it the opposite. I'm not saying liberals don't factor defense, they do, but I think the liberals would put the emphasis on prosperity and then defense. I think realists would put the emphasis on defense first and then prosperity. For the realist, your number one goal is your security and being as powerful as possible, really. And it's only by being as powerful as possible that you can ensure your survival, basically. For anyone who's interested in this philosophy, go check out John Mearsheimer. I think he's almost been like a massive mentor to me, in the sense that I've just watched his videos and I've really enjoyed them. I've also bought his book, The Tragedy of Great Power Politics, which I haven't got around to reading yet, but that is another one which I will get around to hopefully very soon. They don't really believe in democratic peace theory. They like to believe in peace and prosperity, but for them, the national security and self-interest comes first. If you can be prosperous, great, but nothing's more important than defense, right? And also, when it comes to peace, realists believe that peace is only ever temporary. And I kind of think they're right. And again, people, if my previous comments it angered all the realists, now this comment is going to anger all the liberals. Like, oh, how dare you say that? Like, no, I think the realists have a point here. I think we all do our best. We want to do our best to enhance peace and prosperity in the world. But realistically, I think peace is only ever temporary. There's only a matter of time before things change and countries flex their might and do what they must for the betterment either of a small elite or for the betterment of their societies on the whole. One of the things that liberals get right, I think, is stressing the importance of democracy. In the early 90s, there was this guy called Francis Fukuyama who wrote The End of History, who wrote that liberal democracy is the best form of government, and because we should all know that, then there's no need for any more conflict anymore between there's no need for like ridiculous wars anymore. We should all know that the rest of the world will emulate America and we'll all live in a very peaceful and prosperous world order. That hasn't really happened, man. There was a growth in democracy for a while, but recent years have seen this amount of the numbers for this decline quite dangerously, so I'd say. So again, a little bit more clarification. My parents were originally from Iran. They left Iran after the Iranian Revolution of '79. Iran was a booming country before that. I'm not saying it was perfect. No, they still had a dictator. They had a Shah who did at times act like a dictator, but he did modernize the country. And my parents both preferred that Iran to the frickin' religious theocracy it became after 1979. And so they left and they came to a Western democracy where they believe that life is much, much better. And this is where I have a lot of sympathy for liberal Democrats. They cherish the liberal values on which this country is founded. This is why I have a lot of respect for America, actually, in some ways, especially the American Constitution. The preservation of property rights and individual rights, I think these are fundamental goods. And look, my opinions may change over time. I'm still relatively young. But I right now, in this year, where I'm at, I believe that the Constitution is a fundamental good. Liberal principles are fundamental good. Liberal democracies, tolerance, free trade and freedom of expression, yes, to some extent, I genuinely do believe in those things. The freedom of trade that has been championed by America since the end of World War II, isn't as perfect as I had originally believed it was. I recently read a book called Super Imperialism by Michael Hudson. I'm still reading it. I'm about like three-fifths of the way through. It's a very dense book, very difficult book, but it's been one of the most eye-opening books I've read this year. And it shows how, this utopia of free trade it is really just something that suits America's interests, which I find a very interesting read. But look, regardless, let's move back to realism and how realists don't really believe that peace is eternal. Peace is lasting. They believe peace is only ever temporary before war occurs again. And that, if you want peace, well, you better prepare for war, basically, which I think, again, is sensible. A lot of these terms which I throw around for the international order, realism and liberalism, I think individuals could benefit from having realism and liberalism within themselves as well. So, you want to shake with your right hand, but have a stone maybe in your left, I think there's good and bad in everyone. And whilst I would encourage the good in people, I'm not stupid. You got to be kind of careful around people. You got to be willing to flex your might a little bit if someone starts pushing it on you, I think. And I think, look, this video has gone off topic a little bit. I kind of just wanted to talk about the industries and what is in geopolitics, and I'll finish the video by just discussing a little bit more about each of them in more depth. But I think the world is in a really interesting period right now, where America's having to question whether it still wants to champion the US-led order or the rules-based order, right? Whether it still wants to play that role. I think many of the established figures, especially those with Kamala Harris, want that. When Dick Cheney comes out and endorses you, it's very obvious what you're fighting for. And then you've got Trump's team, and within Trump's team are lots more people who are much more skeptical of the rules-based system. I don't think anyone wants America to lose power in that country. I think everyone wants America to be as powerful as possible. But I was watching a debate between Vivek Ramaswamy and John Bolton, and John Bolton's very much a hawk. He's very much a... I would go, like, I don't want to offend anyone, but I would call him a neo-imperialist. Like, he genuinely believes in America's right to kind of police the world and dictate the terms by which everyone else operates. And, that's fine. I mean, I'm not saying he's evil or anything. I'm just saying that's what he believes in. And Vivek Ramaswamy speaks to me much more. So Vivek Ramaswamy is a millennial. I am a millennial as well. We both grew up with an America that was making mistakes in Iraq, in Afghanistan, making blunders in Syria and Lebanon, Syria and Libya as well. And both Ramaswamy and I, if I can put myself on that level, are much more skeptical about that traditional role of America acting as global police. I think it's led to more problems than it has solutions. I'm not saying it's always been bad. I think the America at the beginning of the Cold War truly was a champion of global stability, peace, and prosperity. I like, as things stand, I believe that, not flawlessly, but largely. But Ramaswamy was making the case that maybe America should step back for a while, not entirely, but in a pragmatic way. And when I say step back, I don't mean like not be involved in the world at all. I don't think any American would want that, and I don't think it's even a very realistic policy. I think events like Pearl Harbor, events like 9/11 really shook America. I think the world's far too interconnected now. The world's become a smaller place, and I think it's far too interconnected for any country to just totally step back. I don't think countries, especially Western countries, which may not always have the resources they want, I don't think any of them can feasibly step back and not be involved in other parts of the world. I just don't think that's realistic. But what America might have to do, now that it's arguably a declining superpower, is that it may have to take its hands out of certain theaters of the globe. Let's say maybe Europe. If Trump comes into power, maybe with Ukraine, maybe in the Middle East, right? They'll still might be involved, maybe through proxy, who knows? But they won't be quite as involved as they may have used to be. But what happened? But that money, time, and those resources that they would have dedicated to those kind of areas, well, they might start rechanneling towards maybe China, Southeast Asia, because I think as you see it all the time in reports, articles, and so on. America's biggest competitor now is China. And, you ask any establishment figure, I think they will agree that China is threat number one. China's a threat in security in terms of trade and in terms of military as well. They're investing in their military a lot more. So America's, I think it's already begun. I think they're pursuing I think there could be evidence suggests that they are building a containment strategy and to contain China. And Ramaswamy made a really interesting point. I might just make a video on the Ramaswamy thing, where he went as far as to say that America, might have to reach some type of settlement with Russia over Ukraine so that they can get Russia on side against China, because right now the Americans are pushing the Russians towards the Chinese. Maybe step back, reassess, and maybe go again when America's a more powerful country. And I don't think that's unreasonable. When you look at the US debt, and I'm still learning more about economics, but surely they've got to prioritize paying that back first. And maybe paying that back comes from running the global order, but surely this global order is becoming something just unmanageable. Sure, I mean, obviously, if anyone knows, let me know in the comments below, but surely this whole global order thing is just becoming a really expensive project to run. Like, and I was watching a video by Johnny Harris the other day, on the military-industrial complex, which is a video I'd like to make a video on at some point, and how, America spends more on its defense than the next 10 countries combined. It spends more on its defense sector than all its other departments almost combined. It's insane how much it spends on defense. It's something like just over $800 billion a year on defense, which is insane. And when you look at some of the things they spend ridiculous amounts of money on, the military-industrial complex, the companies within the military-industrial complex, I'm talking about people like Boeing, like Lockheed Martin, there's another one, it's like Grunthorpe or something, it's like it sounds really weird, like Grandthorpe, or I don't know. If you know, let me know. But they're like charging the US government insane amounts of money to like for little bolts. Like they're these little bolts that they can put on like to screw things in with. They charge them like £3,000 per bolt. This is insane. This is like ridiculous inflation from what it was 30 years ago. It's like there's gross inefficiencies in the US system. So when Trump talks about bringing Elon Musk on to kind of rapidly make the government more efficient, I'm not necessarily opposed to that. I think that could be actually quite good based on what little I know. Anyway, look, I've been talking for a while. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you're still around, then great. I'm going to just quickly move on and discuss some of the key areas of geopolitics that you guys could get involved with if you want. So there's obviously sector number one, which is trade and finance. International trade is a massive part of the field. With people going as far as saying that trade is so important that it makes the difference between global war and global peace. It's made countries like the UK prosperous. It's made countries like the US very, very prosperous. To do that, you need a solid understanding of economics. Let me just quickly get the thing up. Some of the roles you can get within this area include trade policy analyst, international trade advisor, trade compliance specialist, and FTA negotiator. It's not what I initially gravitated towards, international trade. I was originally more interested in the realm of ideas. But it dawned on me whilst I was listening to a podcast called Multipolarity, which I highly recommend. Like, definitely go check it out if you haven't already. There was a guy speaking, and he was like, trying to understand world order without an understanding of economics is kind of like a doctor trying to understand the human body without an understanding of the blood cycle. You just can't do it. So I'm looking at defense now, and as far as like fields within geopolitics are concerned, I'd put defense right up there with trade. I think it's one of the most important. I spoke earlier about the John Bolton Ramaswamy debate. Defense is really what determines whether a country goes to war or not. It's whether countries remain protected or not. And some of the key roles you can have within defense include defense policy advisor, security analyst, military intelligence analyst, and defense procurement officer. Moving on, we've got cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is really to do with protecting national infrastructure, especially in the realms of digital and cyberspace. Along with AI, it's one of the younger areas. In the last 10 to 15 years, the industry's seen a massive boom. Some of the roles you can have within cybersecurity involve cybersecurity analyst, cyber threat intelligence specialist, incident response coordinator, and digital policy analyst. That was my introduction video to the relaunch of my World Order show, which I'm going to try and make a weekly feature. If you've enjoyed this video, then do give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, subscribe. If you know anyone who's also interested in geopolitics or media or industry, then do share this video. It would really help the channel grow. If you haven't already, do check out my mini movies. Hopefully they're appearing right now. I try and release one of those every month. As I said, they're really good to watch, really fun, really good stories. And yeah, look, let me know what you'd like to see from me first. Let me know what you'd like me to discuss next. I'm thinking of doing maybe a video on the rules-based order and whether America can sustain the rules-based order. But there are so many topics. I think I'm going to come up with loads as I do more and more of these videos. So yeah, guys, again, thank you so much for your time. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. Thanks again. Bye-bye.